I never expected betrayal to come wrapped in balloons and birthday wishes. When my eldest son, Marcus, tapped his glass and said there was a special presentation for my 50th birthday, I felt something shift in the room. I smiled politely, assuming it would be one of those corny slideshows, baby pictures, maybe a few embarrassing dad jokes, something lighthearted. But then the lights dimmed and the screen came down, and I saw the title flash across the projector. The Failures of Richard Hayes, A Lifetime of Disappointment. Laughter bubbled up from a few guests like they thought it was a joke. I did too, for a second. But then the narration began, and the voice that filled the room stopped me cold. Valerie, my ex-wife. Her voice, smooth and sharp, cut through the air like glass. Richard Hayes. Failed husband, failed father, failed man. The laughter got louder. It wasn't a joke. It was a public execution in PowerPoint form. They showed pictures of every low point in my life, my old beat-up car that broke down after 3 months, my unfinished deck, the camping trip that rained out. They even aired out the most intimate, humiliating parts of my marriage. Valerie went into explicit detail about our sex life, or rather, her dissatisfaction with it. Her voice, mocking and clinical, played over a slideshow while 30 people, including co-workers and distant relatives, sat and laughed. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. I kept waiting for someone to say, "Okay, that's enough." But no one did. And then, as if that wasn't cruel enough, the presentation ended with all 3 of my sons, Marcus, Eli, and Jordan, standing proudly in front of the room, announcing they were legally changing their last names to Valerie's maiden name. Marcus even added, "We'd rather have no father than one who never showed up when it mattered." My world didn't just crack, it collapsed. I sat there in stunned silence, while some guests looked away awkwardly and others chuckled nervously. I didn't shout, I didn't cry, I didn't make a scene. I just stood up, nodded, and said, "Thanks for coming." Then I walked out of my party like a ghost, past people who couldn't even look me in the eye. I got into my car, drove home in silence, and stared at the walls until the sun came up. I kept replaying every second, trying to figure out what I'd done to deserve this. I wasn't a perfect father, but I showed up. I paid for their doctor visits, their college applications, and their mistakes. I bailed them out when no one else would, and this was how they repaid me? I wanted to believe it was a mistake, that they'd call the next day and say it went too far. But when my phone started buzzing the following morning, it wasn't an apology, it was a demand. They needed my signature on the name change forms. That's when I knew. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't just a party gone wrong. It was war. I spent the next day drowning in silence, thinking maybe it would all blow over, that maybe Marcus, Eli, or Jordan would reach out with some semblance of remorse. But instead, my phone kept lighting up with message after message. None of them apologies, just cold, transactional requests for my signature. "Hey, Dad, we need your part of the paperwork," Marcus wrote, like I was a clerk processing their freedom from me. Eli followed up with a smug, "Don't take it personally, it's just a name." Then came the one that pushed me over the edge. A voicemail from Jordan, my youngest, the one I'd always believed had a sliver of compassion left. His voice, laced with annoyance, said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the damn forms and move on." My blood boiled. Not with sadness, no, that had already passed. This was rage, controlled, focused rage. I wasn't going to sign away my dignity in exchange for silence. They didn't know what they'd awakened in me. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight them. I was going to let them win, on the surface. I'd sign what they wanted. I'd play the defeated father, the pitiful man too tired to fight, back. But behind the scenes, I'd already begun my plan, quiet, precise, and far more powerful than any signature. I showed up to the dinner looking like hell. Wrinkled shirt, unshaven, tired eyes. Marcus was already seated when I arrived, smirking like he'd won some battle. Eli gave me a stiff nod, and Jordan barely looked up from his phone. Valerie, of course, wore that polished expression she always did, calm, calculated, like she was already planning the next move. They dove into their justification speeches, Marcus talking about closure, Eli using words like healing and family progress, Valerie chiming in with that fake tenderness she always used when she wanted to control the narrative. "This isn't about punishment," she said. "It's about moving forward. Let's not hold on to the past." I nodded like I understood, as I agreed like I was swallowing every ounce of guilt they needed me to carry. Marcus even slid the UA, name change papers across the table like it was nothing but a bill to sign. I didn't blink. I picked up the pen, signed every single form with a steady hand, and even mumbled a soft, "I get it, I'm sorry I disappointed you." They looked satisfied, victorious. I paid the check, as always, and walked out of that restaurant with my hands in my pockets and a storm brewing in my chest. That night I went home, poured a glass of whiskey, and opened my banking app. I canceled every single transfer. Marcus's mortgage support, gone. Eli's gambling bailouts, cut off at the root. Jordan's tuition payments, terminated. Then I opened a folder I'd been quietly building for years. Screenshots, bank statements, payment receipts, messages. Everything they thought I'd forgotten I had recorded. Every lie, every manipulation, every time they leaned on me in secret while tearing me down in public. I compiled it all, and when I was done, I hit send. The fallout would come. The panic would come. But I wouldn't be the one left scrambling anymore. The next morning, my phone erupted. Marcus's call came first, furious, desperate, saying his mortgage payment bounced and the bank was threatening foreclosure. Then Jordan panicked about his school threatening to drop his classes over unpaid tuition. Then came Eli, rage in his voice, accusing me of betrayal, of destroying his life. His fiancée had packed up and left. And Valerie? She had the nerve to message me, demanding I clean up the mess because the boys are struggling. I stared at her message and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because for once I wasn't the one being played. They thought they knew who I was. They thought I'd keep swallowing my pride, paying the bills and watching from the shadows, while they rewrote the story. But I had flipped the script. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't seek revenge, I just removed the safety net they never appreciated and let them fall. Let's meet son Saturday at noon. My place? Just family? I'll order food. I knew exactly how they'd read it. A sad, defeated invitation from the man they'd humiliated. Saturday arrived and I cleaned the house. Not for them, but for myself. I ordered way too much Chinese food, all their favorites. Marcus's beef and broccoli, Eli's General Tso's, Jordan's crab rangoon, and even Valerie's damn hot and sour soup. They all came, right on cue. Valerie showed up first, wearing that polished mask she always hides behind. The boys followed, Marcus looking worn down, Eli twitchy and pale, Jordan hollow-eyed and tense. I played the host, served food, made small talk, and let them settle into the illusion. But then I said I had a presentation to share, a special one. The look on their faces shifted, uneasy. I plugged my laptop into the TV and hit play. Their birthday video. The same cruel compilation of my failures, narrated by Valerie like a documentary. The laughter, the insults, the speech about them changing their last names. I didn't say a word. I just watched them squirm as the audio filled the room. Their faces flushed, their eyes darted, and suddenly no one wanted to look at me. When it ended, I handed each of them a manila folder, their names printed neatly on the front. Marcus's contained every mortgage receipt I'd paid for the last 3 years, over $43,000, along with a letter stating I'd never pay another cent. Eli's folder held screenshots of every gambling debt I'd covered, every bailout request, and confirmation that I'd enrolled him in a recovery program, attendance optional. Jordan's folder showed his tuition receipts, plus a letter that I'd paid his final balance, but it would be the last time. Then came Valerie's folder, photos she never thought I kept, proof of her affair before the divorce, timestamps, locations. The evidence I'd buried for the boys' sake, never used in court. And just when they thought the hits were over, I handed them one more document, my name change paperwork. If they didn't want my last name anymore, fine. I didn't want it either. I'd reclaimed my mother's maiden name, effective immediately. Their shocked silence was the loudest thing I'd heard in years. Marcus started stammering excuses. Eli tried to say the video was just a joke. Jordan looked like he wanted to crawl onto the floor. Valerie reached for my hand, murmuring about healing and forgiveness. I pulled away. I told them they were welcome to finish their food, but our business was done. Then I grabbed my jacket and walked out the door, leaving them in the ruins they built themselves. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was free. I didn't look back when I closed the door behind me. The cold air hit my face like a slap, sharp and sobering. But it felt good, clean, honest. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking out defeated. I was walking out on my terms. I drove with the windows down, letting the wind carry away the last echoes of their shocked faces. By the time I got home, the messages had already started, flooding in. Marcus texted first. "We need to talk. This isn't how it was supposed to go." Eli followed with a barrage of voicemails, his voice cracking with panic, claiming he was blindsided. Jordan left a long message, half apology, half plea, asking if I meant it, if this was the end of my support. Even Valerie chimed in, her tone swinging between desperation and blame. She called it a childish stunt and said I was ruining the family dynamic. The audacity burned. I poured myself a drink, sat in my quiet living room, and let the fire crackle while their chaos tried to claw its way back into my life. I took a deep breath and opened my laptop, booked a trip I'd been putting off for years, Glacier National Park, remote trails, glacial lakes, and a cabin with no cell service. I wanted stillness. I wanted space. As I packed, I threw in the hiking boots I hadn't worn in years, the old camera I used to love, and a journal I hadn't written in since before the divorce. The next morning, I posted a photo, just my boots on the front porch, a backpack resting beside them, the caption simple, "You can't start over in the same house that broke you." The likes started pouring in, messages from old friends, co-workers, and even distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all saying the same thing. "Good for you." I turned off my phone before heading to the airport. Let them scream into the void if they wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. I wasn't their fixer, their financier, their fool. I was just a man, finally reclaiming his life, step by silent, powerful step. The morning sun filtered through my blinds, casting quiet streaks across the floor, but I felt anything but peaceful. My coffee sat untouched on the kitchen counter, gone cold hours ago. My mind kept replaying the night before, the way Marcus tried to twist the story, the way Eli sat in stunned silence flipping through his folder, the way Jordan's voice cracked when he realized I wasn't bluffing. And Valerie, ever the performer, tried to smooth it all over with her rehearsed lines about family healing. But I saw it in their faces, the collapse, the unraveling, the slow realization that their safety net was gone. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since they left my house. Marcus called 4 times before midnight, each voicemail more desperate than the last. Eli sent me a long email at 2 a.m. trying to explain how it all went too far and how he didn't mean any of it personally. Jordan texted, just one word, "Please." And Valerie, she went into full damage control mode, messaging every mutual friend, spinning the narrative that I was going through something, as if my refusal to be humiliated and used made me mentally unstable. But this time, I wasn't playing along. I didn't respond. I didn't explain. I just sat in my living room, letting the silence settle in my bones. For years, I bent over backward, swallowed my pride, gave more than I could afford. Financially, emotionally, spiritually, just to keep this family from falling apart. But the moment I stopped being useful, they threw me into the fire and laughed while I burned. Now they were choking on the smoke of their own doing. I scrolled through the photos I'd taken over the years, holidays, graduations, even those forced. Family dinners where I always footed the bill while they rolled their eyes behind my back. I paused at one. Marcus, standing next to the grill I bought him, smiling like he owned the world. I remembered how proud I was that day, thinking maybe I was finally getting through to them. How foolish I was. They didn't love me. They loved what I did for them. So I opened my banking app again, this time for good. I changed every password, rerouted every account, and closed the joint savings I'd left open for emergencies. Then I pulled up the itinerary for my upcoming trip, 2 weeks in the Pacific Northwest, hiking, camping, breathing in mountain air, far from the echo chamber of guilt and manipulation. Just before shutting down my laptop, I scheduled one last post, an image of a trailhead sign, a single backpack leaning against it, with a caption that read, "When they finally realize the bridge they burned was the only one holding them up, it's already too late." I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly, not from exhaustion, but from freedom. I had nothing left to give them, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel empty. I felt whole. Let them scramble. Let them blame. Let them sit in the ruins of what they built with their cruelty. I was done. And this time, there was no coming back. The morning after everything unraveled, I stood by the window, watching the wind sweep through the trees outside, but my mind was still spinning from the night before. The house was too quiet, but inside me, everything was loud. Echoes of Marcus's outrage, Eli's pitiful excuses, Jordan's silence, and Valerie's crocodile tears. My phone sat on the table, lit up again and again with messages I refused to open. They weren't trying to make things right. They were just scrambling to regain control after the floor collapsed beneath them. What they didn't realize was that I had finally found my footing. For the first time in years, I wasn't responding with guilt or self-doubt. I had spent a lifetime absorbing the hits, convincing myself that keeping the peace was worth losing pieces of myself. But last night changed everything. Watching their smug faces crumble when I handed them those folders, when I played their video back in that quiet living room, it was like a reset button was finally pressed on my soul. Still, I knew the storm wasn't over. Marcus had already sent 3 voicemails filled with twisted logic about how I was hurting the family. Eli emailed me again this morning, begging me to reconsider my drastic actions. Jordan sent a vague text asking if I was okay. And Valerie? She was already rallying relatives, trying to repaint herself as the concerned ex-wife instead of the narrator of my public humiliation. But their panic didn't move me. Their noise couldn't reach me anymore. I took my coffee to the porch and sat in silence, the crisp air biting my skin, the sound of wind whistling through the trees louder than the buzzing of my phone. I thought about everything I'd sacrificed, missed birthdays, sleepless nights, financial bailouts they never even thanked me for. And then I thought about the future, the one I finally get to build on my terms, free from the weight of expectations I never agreed to carry. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was clear. And clarity, I've learned, is the sharpest weapon you can carry when walking away from people who only ever loved you when you were useful. I opened my journal and wrote the words that had been resting on my tongue since last night. I don't need a seat at their table. I've built my own, and it's peaceful here. And with that, I turned my phone off completely, set it face down, and let the silence cradle me like the truth it had always been. The day after the fallout, I stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the untouched plate of eggs I'd made out of habit. My appetite had vanished the moment I saw the newest email from Valerie. Subject line: "Let's talk before you make this worse." I didn't need to open it. I could already hear her voice in my head, patronizing, manipulative, wearing the same mask she'd worn for years. But the worst part wasn't her. It was the realization that my sons were starting to sound just like her. Marcus had left a voicemail at 1 a.m., slurred and rambling, accusing me of turning my back on them in their time of need. Eli texted me again this morning, telling me to stop being dramatic and start thinking about what's best for the family. Jordan sent a message too, short, clipped, cowardly. "Just talk to Mom." I read it and tossed my phone across the room. It slid across the hardwood floor and stopped against the baseboard like even it was tired of this circus. For years, I bent over backward trying to hold this family together. I was the one they called when the bills piled up, when the car broke down, when they needed advice, money, support, everything. And I gave it every time, because that's what a father does. But now, suddenly, I was the villain in their story, the scapegoat for all the cracks they'd carved into their own lives. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, leaned on the counter, and let the steam curl into the quiet. I thought about the folders. I gave them the evidence, the closure, the truth they'd spent years ignoring, and still, they wanted more. They didn't want healing. They wanted control. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. I walked into the living room, picked up the phone, and deleted every single message. The voicemails, the texts, the emails, they were all gone in seconds. I wasn't going to read another apology that wasn't an apology. I put on my coat, grabbed the keys, and stepped outside, the cold air biting at my face like a jolt of freedom. I wasn't going back. Let them spin their version of the story. Let them call it bitterness. The truth is, I finally found it. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away in defeat. I was walking forward in power. Ethan's story is not just about a humiliating birthday party. It's about years of unspoken sacrifice, quiet devotion, and the pain of being, reduced to an afterthought in his own family. After dedicating decades to providing, protecting, and supporting his ex-wife Valerie and their 3 sons, Marcus, Eli, and Jordan, he was blindsided at his 50th birthday by a cruel presentation, showcasing his failures, narrated by the very woman who once promised to stand by him. The ultimate blow came when his sons announced they were abandoning his last name. But instead of collapsing under the weight of betrayal, Ethan chose clarity over chaos. He cut off the financial support that had long enabled their lives, exposed hidden truths, and reclaimed his self-worth. With quiet strength, he walked away, not to punish, but to finally live on his terms. The key lesson here is that self-respect must never be sacrificed for the sake of belonging. Love without respect is manipulation, and forgiveness without boundaries becomes self-erasure. Ethan's journey reminds us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to affirm your worth, and stop pouring into people who only take. Sometimes, peace begins where obligation ends, and that's where true healing starts.